Warning, the following video contains a gratuitous amount of someone else's opinion. Viewer discretion is advised.
A few months ago, my buddy Sacred convinced me to drop the cash to pick up Sea of Thieves. It's something that we talked about doing for quite a while, but I just wasn't sure if it'd be worth it. After all, it looked like it'd be fun to play for a session or two, but not something that would last very long. Luckily, after playing for dozens of hours with my friends, I can say that I've definitely gotten my money's worth. But despite that, I can't help but feel that it could have been far better. So today, we're going to take a look at Sea of Thieves and try to figure out what worked, what didn't, and share my thoughts on what might have made it a better experience overall. To start off, I think it's worth saying that this game is gorgeous. Look at this, at this, at this. Beautiful. If the entire game was as well done as the graphics, it'd be an easy 10 out of 10. But unfortunately, great graphics are only a hook. They don't make the game. Let's start a look at the gameplay with a tutorial. Things here are quick and easy. It teaches you how to use the item and mission wheels. You meet the mysterious stranger, he gives you your first chest, and teaches you how to sell treasure and buy new cosmetic items. Then it's back to him to learn about the game's tall tales, the closest thing the game has to a story mode. And with that, we're already setting sail. The first time Sacred and I set out, we had no mission, no goal in mind other than to find treasure, and find treasure we did. Treasure on the islands we sailed by, treasure floating out in the ocean, treasure everywhere. We loaded it up and sailed back to the nearest outpost to sell our not-so-hard-fought loot, and that was great, at first. We'd get some cash and buy some new weapons or clothing, whatever, but it didn't take but a couple sessions for us to realize that this whole treasure collecting loop wasn't really getting us anywhere. We were making a little bit of money, sure, but the items you can buy from the shops are purely cosmetic. It was cool to see our pirates get sick new peg legs and eye patches, but coming out with nothing but a super cool hurdy-gurdy does not a worthwhile adventure make. When it came right down to it, grabbing treasure we found was good to do, but it wasn't worth doing it solely for its own sake. But luckily for us, that was no problem because we were just fools that hadn't tried to get into the meat of the game yet. And so we started our first Tall Tale mission. We sailed to the uncharted island between Crooked Mast and Crook's Hollow, spent forever searching for the thing because Sacred swore he checked the captain's quarters from top to bottom, but obviously didn't because it was in there the whole time! Tried to actually follow the instructions given on the new pages instead of just using logic to narrow it down to the proper island, and failed to complete the mission in a reasonable time frame because of it and had to quit. But that was okay, because the next time we played we started it again, made it back to where we were in no time, found the totem lost underwater and headed to Crook's Hollow to retrieve the Shroud Breaker. We struggled to solve the pillar puzzle because we're idiots, but once we did, we found the first two medallion pieces without much issue. The third piece we searched for a good 20 minutes and just couldn't find it, besieged by skeletons regularly, and while they're not a big challenge, the personal combat in the game is just short of abysmal. The gunplay works pretty well. Regardless of which gun you're using, pistol, sniper, or blunderbuss, they're all effective and easy to use. The problems arise when you run out of bullets after only 5 shots. The only way to refill them is in an ammo box, and while you have one on your ship, it isn't exactly practical to run back to it after every minor encounter to load up again. You'll also occasionally run across them on the islands themselves, but that's just a quick fix that has the same issues once you've moved on to another spot of the island. Because of the ammo limitations, you're basically forced into sword combat, and it's not good to say the least. Your options are limited to a basic 3-swing combo or a stronger charged attack that leaves you winded for a second or two after use. It works fine against the single or small groups of basic skeletons, but when the groups get larger and the skeletons are more dangerous types, it comes up very short. But I digress. Finally, after wandering back and forth between the puzzle room to get glimpses at the location and spots we thought might be the right place to dig, another crew that was on the island happened to come by and see what we were doing. They took pity on us and helped us find it without additional issue. And with that, we finally had it! The Shroud Breaker was ours! We just had to bring it back to the mysterious stranger, and Sacred got disconnected moments before I turned in the mission. But even that was fine because the third time was the charm and we finally completed the mission for real. But despite the fact that we'd finally succeeded in our goal, the feeling I got wasn't really joy or any strong positive emotion. It was relief. It was the removal of strong negative feelings pervading the Tall Tale experience that continued through the rest of the missions in the quest line that we did, and there are two big reasons for that. The first one is impermanence. Sea of Thieves is an always online experience, and part of that is the inability to affect any real progression or change to the world. We went in and secured the Shroud Breaker, but despite that, it's still there, just a mission selection away from being ready to rescue again by us or any other crew on the server. It's not just the Shroud Breaker though, it's almost everything. Treasure, supplies, your ship, even mission progress. Nothing is permanent except your cosmetic niceties, gold earned, and missions completed. If you start a mission and you can't finish it, you have to start all over, and that applies to all the Tall Tales, and they're all very similar to the first, just increasing in complexity and time required to do them. The other thing that's honestly the biggest anxiety inducer of the entire experience is other players. The unpredictability turns basically every ship sighting into a nail-biter in the worst way. There are 3 possible outcomes to any encounter with other players, and unfortunately, their beneficialness to both sides is inversely proportional to how often they actually happen. The most likely option, occurring in our sessions about 70% of the time, is that one side will open fire on the other and attempt to sink the ship and/or steal their treasure. While I'm sure a lot of players enjoy doing this, to me it's just a waste of time and supplies. Unless the ship you're attacking happens to have a ton of treasure on it, it's not even very profitable. Ship combat is okay, but there are other types of battles that make much better use of it, as in PvP battles the optimal strategy is just to board the enemy ship and drop their anchor, which pretty well grinds the fun aspects to a halt. After that it's just sword or gun combat, both of which are generally pretty weak in PvP encounters. Not to mention that as with most combat, the side that strikes first gives themselves a pretty good advantage, so I don't know if a lot of these people even attacked us because they wanted to, or if they were just trying to protect their own stuff. The second most common option, occurring most of the rest of the 30% of the time, is that you'll just pass by each other. This is fine, though it adds a lot of useless tension and rerouting to try and avoid other people's ships. The last option is to form an alliance, and it essentially never happens. In our dozens of hours, we successfully found 2 other crews willing to form one. And that's ridiculous! It's literally all upsides. The crew that sells their items gets full gold and experience for their stuff, while other crews in our alliance get 50% of each also. When Sacred and I were broke scrubs, the people that taught us that alliances even existed helped us get like 15,000 gold pieces, and in return, we were worthless because we didn't have anything to sell until after they'd already left the session. But still! Why would you not do this with everyone? It's the obvious strategy! Whatever. Shortly after completing the Shroudbreaker for the first time, we started playing with even more of our friends, and I can definitely say that for us, the game became even more fun the closer we were to having a full crew. But that's primarily because of the increased camaraderie. Your mileage may vary on that aspect. Increasing the size of your crew does have a couple of noticeable effects. The first I want to talk about is boss health. Bosses are scaled to crew size to keep them from being a total pushover with larger crews. This makes perfect sense, but still annoys me since the combat isn't so hot. List that one under a nitpick. The more obvious one is that it restricts your ship selection, and with that, this seems like a perfect time to delve into the actual ships available. Sea of Thieves offers 3 ship options, with the sloop being the smallest and most maneuverable with a maximum of 2 crew members, the brig being a mid-range with a max of 3, and the galleon being the biggest and sturdiest with a max of 4. Along with an increase in size and crew limits, the ships also have an increase in the complexity of operating them. Raising the anchor in a sloop is quick. Raising, dropping, or adjusting its single sail while also piloting the vessel is simple, and with only a single cannon on each side, combat can easily be covered at maximum efficiency by a single party. Cannonballs are kept right on the deck for easy access. Everything is designed to make things as simple as possible for a 1 or 2 man crew. It can't take very much damage without going down, but making repairs and bailing water out of the hull is quick and easy. The galleon, on the other hand, is a difficult beast to tame. Raising the anchor is a more lengthy process, especially if not being done by the full crew. With 3 sails that require you to cross the length of the deck to maneuver them all, piloting and sail manipulation are now clearly defined as separate jobs. Supplies are no longer a few steps away. Everything is below deck and separated into their own sections. It can absorb a lot more damage before it goes down, but to balance that, keeping afloat in battle requires repairing holes across 2 huge levels, and bailing water requires running from the very bottom of the ship back to the main deck. Now that's not to say that the galleon is bad. It can be frustrating at times, but when you've got a full crew and everyone is operating on the same wavelength, it's a force to be reckoned with. The brig sits in the middle and is my personal favorite, even though it's not always the best option. Generally, the optimal ship choice is to take the smallest ship you're able to for the crew size you're working with. Before I can get back to our high seas adventures, there's one more topic that I need to go over lest my next story make no sense, and that's non-PvP sea combat. I touched on this a bit when talking about PvP, but it's not only other players that will attack your ship. The most common targets you'll see when out on the high seas are skeleton ships. These function similarly to player ships, but they won't generally attack you first and don't really attempt to ram or board. They'll simply sail around firing cannonballs at you until either you sink or they sink. These can be pretty fun to battle, but if they manage to hit you too many times in a row, you'll end up below deck bailing water and patching holes instead of fighting back, which can really drag the battle out if you've got a small crew. Consistent, concentrated fire can put them down super quickly though. Following behind them are megalodons. They're pretty tough and can deal a lot of damage, so initially we did our best to run away, but it didn't take long to realize that with some dedication, we could actually take them down without too much trouble. The biggest issue became tracking them down when they tried to run away from us. The final and by far the most dangerous enemy on the high seas is the Kraken. These monsters of the deep turn the sea a dark black and slow your ship's pace to a crawl. Many tentacles shoot up out of the water and attack both the ship and any individual foolish enough to stand on the deck. We saw the Kraken quite a few times, and our strategy was almost always to try and keep our ship limping but alive long enough to make it out of its range. It can wrap its tentacles around the ship for massive damage, easily knock or throw crew members off the deck entirely, and even capture crew members in its tentacle mouths, which is often a death sentence if your health isn't full. Now this isn't to say that it's impossible to defeat one by any means. Sacred and I actually managed to do just that during one of our sessions when we had nothing on our ship to lose but our lives, but it's certainly not an easy endeavor. Skeleton ship encounters can be fun sometimes, and the Megalodon and Kraken are two of my favorite parts of the entire game. That said, I've got one big problem with them all, and a second with the sea monsters. My big problem with all of them is that the amount of loot you get doesn't really seem to justify fighting these when they show up. If you're itching for combat, you can certainly do so, but in reality, running is the much safer and more convenient option. My second issue specifically with the sea monsters is they can pop up at incredibly inopportune times. I can't even remember how many times we've been trying to fight off another player crew and a Megalodon decided to make it a three-way, and if I never have another Kraken attack us while we're just trying to regroup after our ship was sunk and some of us died, it'll be too soon. In semi-related news, now we can get back to the adventure. We were sailing with our pal Brandon and my lovely wife Sarah to find the Shroudbreaker again, since neither of them had ever gotten it before. The entire voyage was a pain in the neck because we were constantly being attacked by other players. We hadn't even all loaded in yet before our ship was under attack the first time. But it was fine, we managed to get it and were sailing to bring it back to the mysterious stranger, with basically no food, wood, or cannonballs left. But that was okay, what could go wrong? Well, it turns out everything. We were attacked by who else? The Kraken. Killing it at this point was out of the question, so we made our plan. Sarah, Brandon, and I would bail water until the ship went under, and then Sacred would row away with the Shroudbreaker and prey. Sarah was killed. Then Brandon. I was flung from the ship but still alive as Sacred made his daring rowboat escape. Coincidentally, he rowed right next to me and was able to rescue me. Then we hid on an island until Sarah and Brandon were able to bring our replacement main ship and finish up the mission. Because we managed to escape with the item we needed still in our possession, that's one of my favorite memories from my time with Sea of Thieves. But that could have just as easily gone the other way and forced us to restart the mission, wasting over an hour of all of our lives. I focus pretty much exclusively on the Tall Tale so far, but other types of missions exist as well. The only thing is, they're all pretty weak. Some missions are treasure hunts where you have to figure out which island to go to and then where to dig on the island to find treasure, but the treasure is usually junk. There's missions to kill bosses on a random island, but they're super easy to kill and your reward is usually junk. Sometimes you'll even find a box of stuff that you need to deliver to a particular place, and I don't even know how bad the reward is for that one because that's such a boring premise for a pirate mission we never even bothered to do it. I certainly don't hate the game. I had a huge amount of fun and I think it does a lot of things right, especially the little touches. Your crew can play instruments and dance. You can change the color of your lanterns on the ship of the damned depending on how you were killed. You can fish while your crew yells at you for being so useless. You can capture, keep, and sell a lot of the animals you find on the islands, even snakes if you lull them with a song. There's so many small things like this that I couldn't possibly mention them all here. I just wanted to point out that there's a lot of good things here, even if some of the main aspects are heavily flawed. So there you go. I've laid my thoughts about the game as it is bare, but I'm not quite done yet. I'm not going to claim to be a master at knowing how to make games fun by any means, but in the case of this one, I feel like a simple change at its core could have made it so much better than it currently is. Not forcing you to sail with other crews. Having the main game let you do things in a world of your own would be a major game changer. As it is, the threat of running into other crews hangs over everything you do, and they can undo an entire session's worth of progress if they're aggressive. Additionally, everything you can purchase for your character or ship is cosmetic, and with the game as it is, that's how things need to be. I played enough GTA Online to know how frustrating it is to be a newbie with weak guns trying to grind up to the top, but removing other players would allow for some kind of progression in your gear. How in-depth that would get, of course, would be up to the developers, but even a very mild system improvement would make it feel more worthwhile. But perhaps most importantly, it would allow you to have world progression. If Sacred and I found the Shroudbreaker, then the Shroudbreaker has been found. If we're in the middle of sailing to fight Captain Briggsy and we need to drop out because it's 3 AM and we both work in the morning, we can do that and come back without needing to start over with our ship's current state and our supplies and collected treasure still intact. If we've collected a treasure map and it's across the ocean, we don't have to go do it or lose it forever. We can hold it for now and do it later. We can do what we want without worrying about time because the world isn't start and stop. It's continuous. And a dedicated PvP mode that plays as the game currently does could still coexist with this one. But unfortunately, the current way the game plays is so baked into its DNA that my dream game will likely never happen. And that's all I've got to say about Sea of Thieves. But I'm curious, what do you think of Sea of Thieves? Do you think it'd be better if it was more like I described? Or maybe the things that bothered me make it more fun for you? Let me know in the comments. I always love to hear your thoughts. Peglet's really sexy today, Captain. I know your fat ass is not sitting on this while I try to push it. I know goddamn well that that did not just happen.
Oh, hey, we're pointing in the direction we need to go. Cool.
I will penetrate your anus with a rusty knife.
God, that sounded real. That sounded like a real frustration with me.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking around until the end of the video. If you want to see more videos like this one, don't forget to click that subscribe button down below. If you want to see more by me now, click here to see the last video that I made on Wii Sports. Or if you're looking for something different, click here to check out the super scientific video Sacred and I made determining the most dateable character in the Inuyasha series. Regardless of which one you choose, I hope to see you next time. Bye.